Despite AI advancements, 59% of developers still mention DevOps complexity as a hurdle, particularly in legacy systems and cloud migrations. I've worked with AI since 2018. I know what it can do and what it can't, so unlike other LinkedIn AI influencers, my mind rarely gets blown by it. Like most of you, been playing with code gen tools quite a bit.
I have no technical ability, and I know nothing about music.
Some were sponsors on this channel, with others I just have fun playing and building stuff locally. But when it gets to bringing stuff to production, and I mean real production, AWS-based infrastructure production, in all honesty, AI is pretty much useless. So I found something which naturally, and you'll see why it's so natural in 5 seconds, can do everything. Create, plug bits of code I wrote myself, but also pack, build, deploy, and create the infrastructure for me, with best practices in mind, based on real data, not a generalist LLM hallucinating answers. That's a lot, I know, so this is Amazon Q Developer CLI, and I'm using it for 3 main reasons. 1, it's a CLI, by far my favorite method of using anything. 2, it's open source, and that's something I'd never stop appreciating. And 3, it's maintained by AWS, meaning it's been heavily trained on documentation, best practices, and basically the go-to models for infrastructure. Oh yeah, and they were kind enough to sponsor this video, so I'm not gonna just use some GUI-based hallucination chat, am I? But in all seriousness, as you're about to see, I don't think they expected me to take it where I have. Let's get started. Homebrew is the quickest way to get it installed on a Mac, and if you're running Linux, check out the docs, it has everything you need. Once ready, Q Chat is your main gate to speaking with it, and I'd start from running /help to list all available commands and options. While still a beta feature, Q lets you manage different profiles so that when you're working on different projects or technologies, or even just environments, you can load different profiles with different contexts. I can create a senior engineer, for example, and add a set of rules to it. Let's generate such a file using Q, and yes, I'm aware of the fact that having the AI compose its own guardrails is not a great idea. I just like the irony. Changes made for the first time by Q are met with an approval prompt asking you to say yes or no or T to trust specific tool going forward. In this case, it's the tool for writing files. Now with the file available, to realize it, we run /context add file name. If you are curious, here's the file touching the code quality, architecture, process, security, and more. Side note, it's always great to have rules for AI. It's available with most models and platforms. They all have ways to load rules and limit the AI in what it should or should not do, but mainly how things should be done, what's expected in terms of quality and boundaries. But let's put things on the table. It's still an LLM, it can still hallucinate, and it still needs reviewing. Keep that in mind. Everything Q stores is going under a directory that most AWS users already know. It's the .aws, but now we have an Amazon Q directory under it, and there's a senior engineer and a JSON file with context that Q loads every time the profile is used. While working, if you're curious about the number of tokens and specifically how much is a specific conversation using, /usage helps understanding that by separating tokens used for loading context files, Q responses, and your own prompts as a user. There's also a nice feature that reduces tokens usage by running /compact when you feel it's too much but still want to keep the conversation going. Cool, we've got the basics out of the way. Time to build a real-world application that's also going to be open source. Every good application starts with an architecture design. I'll be running a backend with Valkey, and just for the sake of example, I'll separate them into different network subnets to see how Q addresses them. Pro tip, this goes for any platform. Try to keep your proxy /load balancing as the world-facing object, while sending traffic internally to a network sitting behind a NAT, which is similar to your home router. And lastly, keeping your data in a subnet that cannot go out to the internet and can only be reached internally. Okay, enough with DevOps talk. Let's screenshot this piece of art and use it as context, asking Q to take a look and improve. Since fs-read was previously trusted, there's no stopping for approval now. And Q sees my network structure. It even understands file key is a better Redis. I made a video about that you can find above, but in terms of improvements, it suggests mainly additional components for high availability, security, and logging, but I think I got an A from AWS for this plan. Here's another great use for images in context. And sorry AWS for doing that, but I can't help it. I want Q to roast the UX of the AWS dashboard, and you're going to love this. Where do I even begin? Information overload, wasting prime real estate, hide and seek with basic functionality, consistency? Never heard of it. Amazon, please listen to your own creation. Okay, let's build. Here's a small hint of what we're building today. It's a delicious one. while I can start with an inline prompt, this is going to be quite long, and as a NeoVim user, I cannot skip this feature. So /editor pops the default editor in the system. To make sure NeoVim is in fact the one that pops, I'm going to make sure that the editor and var is set before Q is launched. Now, to reload senior engineer as earlier, we run /profile, set, and the name of profile. Then /editor opens NVim, and this is where I can happily build my application. Today, I'm building a home barista app. When I host lots of people, I have to go around them, ask for people what they want, remember everything, go make it, figure out who wanted dairy but not foam and who wanted black no sugar, and I don't like that. So how about I create a home barista ordering system? But this one is going to be special. It'll send notifications to me, the barista, when someone orders, but also to the user's phone when their drink is ready. What do you think? Stupid or dumb? Use the comment section to roast. I'll be using ntfy.sh, which is a super lean open source notification service that fits like a glove here. When saving the file, Q takes it in and starts working. I'll save you a bunch of JavaScript iterations and jump straight to what we've got. A project with a backend and frontend that can run with Docker Compose, and there we have it. I know it looks terrible. I'm also happy to receive contributions, but anyway, as a user, you can start an order, take a cortado, for example, add your name and notes. If you want notifications, there's a link to download the NTFY app or subscribe directly through a browser. This is what the browser notifications look like, and there's my mobile app showing an incoming order from a customer. As a barista, there's my dashboard. Imagine an iPad on top of my espresso machine showing orders at home that I can make, then hit when it's ready, and the customer's phone gets notified. Great success. But the entire point of the video was to make things a reality, right? As in literally going to production. So we can do the naive option and ask you to just randomly show how they build it on AWS, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to run like pros with the most hyped term of the last few weeks, MCP. When people say MCP, I see others cringe, walk away, or light up, but it's really not that special. MCP is just a pipe that lets your LLM speak to something. That's it. Yes, like an API. We had that for years. The so-called magic here is that the LLM works with natural language and that we can tell it to do stuff with the API rather than just looking code. Let's take a look. Q comes with /tools to let you know what's available at your disposal. In this case, we trust fsread, but it can also execute bash, write files, and even, what do you know, use AWS. So before going full MCP, we can ask it to run a public Ubuntu machine on my private account. But things aren't going to go as expected. I mean, it does have everything right. It finds the keys, fails over missing data, but then iterates over and fixes it on its own like a real agent. It then finds a missing subnet ID, and it'll go on its own and read available subnets. It keeps going until I have a simple SSH command and a public IP to work with. But oh no, we need an SSH key. And what did Q set? Nothing. It suggests I use some other method. Granted, if it had all the information, I'd probably get this in one go, but that's something we should expect to see improving, but another example of why engineers aren't going to disappear. It's shortening the time to do something, but still needs someone that knows what they're doing to utilize it and oversee things. Food for thought. Similarly, I'm going to use it to terminate the machine and explicitly ask it to delete the elastic IP it decided to create. Now, let's upgrade things to the next level. AWS Labs have the MCP repo where you can find a long list of MCP servers by Amazon and for Amazon products, from documentation through cost analysis, AWS Terraform provider, but also so many other services. We'll use two of these. The first is a cost analysis server, allowing you to explore but also reduce costs on AWS, and all we have to do is grab the JSON listing the server and add it to Q. The second will be the Terraform provider, allowing us to create Terraform templates based on the best practices officially maintained by Amazon. To do that, we create mcp.json under .aws/AmazonQ. Here are the two servers combined. The first is the AWS Labs Terraform MCP, and below that we have the JSON just copied from the docs, both in their default state, and they show up on AWS Labs exactly the same. Now back to the Home Barista project, Q chat, and there's our two MCPs starting to initialize. We can now /MCP list and see the running servers, or run /tools again and watch all the available new functionality. Now here's where things gets interesting. Let's ask Q to use its own MCP and create a Terraform architecture around the project. Q now uses new options to search the provider docs, look at commands and examples, and even security scans on top. It may ask for microservices to use, or we can tell it to run freestyle, which I already did, and there we have it. Things running on ECS plus Elasticache, a VPC around the things with NAT gateways and lots of other infra, and if you don't know what each means, don't worry about it. That said, none of this sounds cheap. In comes our second MCP. Let's ask it to analyze the cost of the infra listed in Terraform. If this task doesn't ring a bell, there's more than one open source doing exactly that. Not sure whether they're surviving what's Q doing here, but anyway, let's trust the Analyze Terraform project from AWS Cost Analysis server. It'll go out and read pricing on the web for each product with the exact prices and then come back with a monthly cost breakdown. Now, this ends up being $100 a month. I'm doing something I don't normally do. I'll give Amazon a slack here. For one, I didn't tell it what to do exactly, so it built a highly available, robust architecture around 2 container deployments, and even used Elasticache to store my coffee drinks, like a single entry a day on average. That's unfair to expect it to dial things down. There are many ways to build light, efficient infra on Amazon for a fraction of the cost. So let me show you one way to go about it. So let's use Q to dial things down. We don't need 2 availability zones. We don't need a load balancer. We don't need Elasticache, and Q updated everything, including the Terraform files and its cost breakdown, which was now brought down to 45. Not bad for the first iteration, I'd say. Now, if you've ever run Terraform code, even one that's generated by AI, there's zero, and I mean zero chance it's all connected on the first try. But here's the power of an MCP. Terraform plan actually goes smoothly, meaning the object configuration and everything else makes sense. And we can even go ahead and Terraform deploy this thing. It'll start running and we'll start seeing things pop on AWS, like a coffee cluster and some tasks under it. I'm not going to keep you waiting. The coffee ordering service is up and running, built, architected, and deployed in a massive effort by Amazon Q CLI. The Home Barista project is open source. You can find it on my GitHub, deploy it on your own, and enjoy it. And this brings 2 things to mind. Are you also a coffee enthusiast who took things way too far? Or just someone who would like to use something like that? If you are that type of person who deploys things on their own, check out the simplest way I found to do just that, using DHH's open source Kamal. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.